Hey Joshua, I'm going to read your energetic signature. So when I went into your energy field, I saw a man, but he was a different timeline version of you. And I asked him what he was doing, and he said, I'm part of the ministry. And I was like, oh, like the church? And he was like, no. He said the Ministry of Magic. I was like, sir, this is giving me Harry Potter. Okay. And he was like, no, it's different. And okay, before we get into this journey, this has only happened to me one other time in giving somebody else a reading. This is going to be very interesting. Okay, so I was seeing him further down his timeline where this version of you was actually working in a professional sense as a magician or a wizard, if you will. They didn't exactly use those terminologies. That's very earth-based. This is from a different dimensional space. But for the context, we'll call him like a magician or a wizard. But he hadn't always worked for this ministry. There was a long time where he was doing a self-study and then he was put in that position, and so we'll get into his journey. So he said, let me show you like his life, and then we touched hands like this, and then all of a sudden I was in a cottage in this field, and I saw him, and he was looking over this dining room table, if you will, and it had all of these papers on it, and he was kind of like holding his hand in his or his head in his hands, and he was looking very frustrated, and he was like scuffling through all these papers. And I sat down at the table in front of him, and he was so kind of like lost in thought and trying to figure something out that he didn't notice me at first. And when he looked up, he went like this, and he said, don't scare me like that. And then I started to explain why I was there, because I do that with different timeline versions. And he was like, I already know who you are. And I was like, okay. I was like, how do you know that? And then he just stared at me, and I was staring at him, and I was like, okay. Like, apparently we had met before, and at first I didn't really understand that, because I was like, oh, maybe it's because he's a magician, a wizard, that he's picking up on, like, that I'm a timeline jumper. But oh, we'll get into that as well. And I asked him, why are you so frustrated? And he said, I can't find it. I was like, well, what are you trying to find? And he said, come over here and look. And so I was like looking over his shoulder at this paper, and I pulled out a magnifying glass. I don't even know where I found that, but I pulled out a magnifying glass, and I was looking through it, and basically it was kind of like a map almost, and I saw this very specific part on the map, and it had this star on it, and then all of a sudden me and him were sucked into the map, and then we ended up in a mountainscape. And he looked at me and he said, you did it. And I said, I did what? He's like, you transported us here. And I said, okay. I said, what are you looking for? And he said, I need these very specific type of berries. And so we were looking around, and then he found them. And he said, I'm actually creating an elixir that is going to help cure a lot of diseases. But I haven't been able to find these, because basically this mountainscape was like on the other side of the world, and it would have taken him like years in order to get there, and he didn't even know where to go. But per my perceivability gifts and being able to timeline jump, I was able to not even consciously like take us there. And that's when I realized I was not actually a part of the journey. I was actually looking at a memory. And this is, again, the second time that this has happened during a reading, where you are not the first version of you that I have met before. Okay, I'm going to start tearing up, because honestly, during your reading, I was crying so much because I realized that I was a different timeline version that has already met your other timeline version. Okay? I was actually friends with him in that other time and space, and so you and me meeting up in this timeline is a reoccurrence. Okay, that's why you were drawn to me, because your soul already had met me in a different lifetime, and me and him had some really in-depth conversations. And basically what had happened was he knew that I could teleport jump, and apparently there were not hardly anybody that could do that during that time and space, and that's a gift that I have in this timeline as well, which is really wild, that I can do that for people here. It's a rollover gift, but he knew that I was able to do that, but what he didn't realize was that if I had placed my will and intention and then mixed that with his will and intention, when I looked at that map, I was able to timeline jump both of us to the exact place that he needed to be to find those. And so I was looking at a past memory of us. That's why he was like, duh, I know who you are. So he took these berries and created the elixir, and then he was able to like heal so many people, and he was recognized and acknowledged for that, and then he was given a position in the Ministry of Magic. Which is also really funny because I know that you told me that you were a home health aide at one point, I think, and that makes sense because, again, that's kind of a karmic rollover thing where you really care about people's wellness, and that's why sometimes we're naturally drawn to certain things in these incarnations because we have experienced it in some other type of form or fashion in a different lifetime. Asked him if you also had this ability of kind of creating these elixirs or creating these, you might think of it as like Ayurveda now, but there's a lot of different things you can get into, like aromatherapy or herbology. But he said no, he has his own special brand of magic. So he did say that he will mentor you, though, because he is this wizard magician. And maybe you can find out what the exact terminology is by going in meditation and connecting with him. But he's very advanced in his magic, so he would love to assist you. But he also said that he wants you to research nymphs, and I'm going to spell it out for you. Okay, it's Nymphs. It is a Greek mythology goddess that lives around mountains and lakes and just different nature spots. And they are very magical creatures. Apparently you were a nymph in a different timeline as well. And if you research about them, okay, you're going to have that past, I don't like to call them past lives, they're different timelines, but you're going to have that information be able to be recalled for you, and then also connect with that nymph as a mentor as well, because this different magician wizard was saying that you have the gift of connecting with nature spirits and calling on elementals, like the elemental spirits, to assist you with healing others, healing yourself, or even helping you with manifesting. So then we start dipping a little bit into shamanism there. Okay, so I'm going to share a video with you that's going to be really beneficial for you to watch. This is Alberto, and he is a Peruvian shaman and a psychologist. And I know this video says the power of the jaguar, but he actually goes over the 4 totem animals in Peruvian shamanism. And I highly recommend watching this. You can find it on YouTube. It really opened up a lot of things for me. And so the reason I say that about the animals is they are correlated to specific elements. And this is going to help you with your elemental gift or our nature spirit gift. Okay, so we have earth, which is the mental body, which is represented by the hummingbird, water, which is our emotional state, represented by the jaguar, fire, which is our physical body, represented by the snake, and air, which is our spiritual body, represented by the eagle.